We've done these for a number of years now, the kind of geographic impact, okay? So it's basically, particularly welcoming applications, but we'll deliver good relations programs in the following areas. So I'll explain a wee bit about this, okay, after I show you. But anyway, starting off, so it's working hours in North Down, working Armagh, Banbridge and Craigavon, Belfast East, Fermanagh and Omagh, Lisburn and Castlereagh, Mid and East Antrim, and Newry, Mourne and Down, okay? And then it's just saying about the council also welcomes applications that will deliver good relations programs in rural and or border communities. Again, this is just where this comes from. It's just basically us looking at the latest set of hate crime figures that came out that were published by the PSNI at the end of August there. Those figures really take you up until the end of June. All we're trying to do is give a sense that we're taking on board where the main issues are taking place. So it's basically what I do is breaking down the proportion of where that hate crime's happening, then look at the core funding programme, where's our work taking place, and just seeing if there's any kind of really imbalance there, okay? But what I will say is, if you're not working in those areas, you're not going to be penalised for it. The main thing that you'll have to focus on is just your main issue is having a good application in there and as much detail as you can provide, as Karina will talk about later on, okay? Because that's one of the questions we get asked straight away. Well, if I'm not working in those areas, am I going to get penalised? No, it doesn't work that way. We're just trying to reflect that basically the proportion of work that we're currently supporting at the minute would be proportionately lower in those areas, all right? But as Karina will emphasise, it's basically about you putting in a good application, giving plenty of detail, so you're, no matter what area you're working in, because we recognise that, yes, it might look like there's lots of work going on, but there's lots of issues there, okay? Particularly welcome applications to support the following areas of activity. So it's talking about work that supports and develops the next generation of good relations practitioners, as this relates to emerging challenges such as sustainability, the environment, poverty, changing nature of communities, etc. Again, we're just recognising that the work that's being done in this kind of area it's a change in demographic, and obviously we've noticed over the last number of years of practitioners moving on. I think after COVID, a lot of people had a bit of time to reflect on what we were doing. And, so it's basically trying to support work that's going to support the next generation of practitioners in whatever way. And then again, this last point is really for yourselves. So it's basically, we didn't want to be too prescriptive. So we're just talking about any work that aims to engage communities on emerging issues of concern, identified by applicant groups yourselves, okay, as requiring priority intervention. Again, just emphasising the need for such work will need to be clearly evidenced by applicant groups. So it's relatively open. It's basically for yourselves to kind of, you're the experts in this, so you're telling us what you feel the issues are that need to be addressed, okay?
When you submit your application, the first stage of the assessment will be the checking stage, and that will be checking for eligibility. So that will be checking, first of all, that the organisation is legally able to operate in Northern Ireland. And then we also check if the organisation is financially viable. And we will do that through an accountant as well. They will go through your accounts to check that. And they'll also check that there's clear demonstration that there's robust financial and reporting systems in place in your organisation. We'll also check that there's an adequate community relations policy or good relations or equality policy in place. We also check that you've completed the form fully. And that you also have submitted all the correct supporting documentation that we request in the additional information section. And then we also have a brief glance over the application at that stage to make sure that the work is somewhat described as meeting the objectives of the fund before we do a thorough assessment, and also that all the beneficiaries are from Northern Ireland. Now, it should be noted, if you fail any of these stages, unfortunately, your application will be made ineligible at that point. So in terms of what we fund, so this fund is about salary costs. It's a core fund. We're here to support organisations' salaries, core salaries, and also mainly salaries that have community relations activity. We do support some finance or admin, but it's not like a full-time admin post or a full-time finance post. It would be like, say, 20% or something like that to complement that other officer's post. So we fund up to 90% of salary costs, so you will still be required to find the other 10%, and that can either be through your own reserves or it could be through another funder. And you will be asked in the application to tell us where that other 10% is going to come from and whether you have secured it or not. And then we also provide some associated organisational running costs, and only under the following headings. So mileage, and that'll be paid up to 45p a mile. Rent, heat and light, telephone, internet, but again it's only landline costs, not mobile phones, insurance and audit fees. Your running costs cannot exceed 25% of your total grant requested. So we don't fund work that falls within the remit and responsibility of other funders, so such as minority ethnic or minority faith communities, or work with victims and survivors. Proposals submitted by individuals, work outside Northern Ireland. We won't support the running of campaigns to support the political activities or to lobby for or against particular pieces of legislation. We don't fund capital costs or the purchase of equipment, or 100% of costs, like I said, or any sort of project cost, to deliver an actual project. We look at the assessment of the application and the materials presented to us. Like I said, we do a financial analysis and scrutiny by our accountant, and then we also reflect back on any significant findings from a review. In terms of the assessment, it's been split into 4 parts. So we've got the methodology and outcomes section, which is the most important part. It's 60% of your application. The score will go towards that. Value for money is worth 20%. Organisational experience and your track record is 10%, and governance and your financial arrangements is 10%. So in terms of methodology and outcomes, what I'll be looking at there is the alignment of your outcomes with our strategic priorities and our welcome statements. I will look at if there's a clear evidence of need and what supporting information you've provided to back that up. You will be able to submit 2 pieces of evidence under that section in your application, which you'll see later. The fit with the programme remit and the themes, and whether what you're wanting to do is aligning that. I'll look at the detailed methodology and the approach for carrying out the work plan, and I would like applicants to be able to submit a quarter by quarter breakdown of the work being carried out. So we ask for a 1-year work plan for just year 1 of your funding, but if you could break that down into January, March, April to June, to July to September, October to December, and just bullet some actions of what's going to happen. It just helps as well when we're out with the group, that we can it helps with the monitoring as well of how the programme's going, if you're behind or not behind, if you're on track, and also importantly, we need details of beneficiaries and delivery partners. I also look at whether the outcomes are clear and measurable, and also looking at your progress measures, how you're going to see if you are achieving your outcomes, and also what potential risk factors you've identified, and then actions, how you're going to mitigate against these risks. Under the value for money section, we'll look at the overall cost of the work plan, and it must be proportionate to the quality of work and quality of outcomes that will be achieved. We'll look at the geographical and beneficiary reach. Saying that, don't be panicked that, I'm not working NI-wide, I'm just working in East Belfast, for example. It's all relative, you know what I mean? It's the beneficiary reach in your area that you work in. So it's not like, the more towns you work in, the more points you're going to get. It doesn't work like that. It's all, relative to what you're doing. Costs that directly contribute to the delivery of the described work programme. So again, we have a look at that to make sure that it is all directly related to what you're doing. So in terms of the organisational experience and the track record, we look at the contractual compliance with previous NICRC fund awards. And if you haven't received an award from us before, we will maybe look at other funders and see what you were like as a grant recipient with them. Evidence of skills and proven track record in the delivery of practical CR interventions. And we also look at the understanding of the policy and contextual issues within the CR sector. Finally, we look at the governance and financial arrangements of your organisation, and we will look at whether you have adequate match funding, and that's in terms of the 10% of the salary. But we'll also look at, other funding that your organisation has as a whole. And we also look at evidence of good governance arrangements, your board structure, your organisational structure, and what reporting arrangements you have in place as an organisation. So in terms of making an application, it is online. And you'll have to go to our website, so nicrc.org.uk. And then you can go to funding, and then it's the portal.
When you're going through the application, there's that button there to download PDF, okay? Just as you're doing your applications, I would recommend, once you want to start reading over things before you go near submitting, download a PDF of it, and it's a lot easier to read.
So the first part is about your organisation. So make sure that you put in your organisational name, and make sure it matches your governing document. That would be very important. That the two are identical, and just your contact details. So, and then the next one will be about the organisation type, and that will describe the legal status of your organisation. And if your legal type isn't there, just hit other. We're open to formally constituted community groups and voluntary organisations. So that could be an association, a trust, a company limited by guarantee, or a community interest company. And also, if you have a charity number or a company number, put those in there as well. And then we ask you for the main purpose and regular CR activities. So we want you just to tell us about your day-to-day activities as an organisation, and in particular, regular community relations interventions. And then the next box will be a short description. And this is a short description of your organisation, but this box, is important to remember, this is what we use for our publicity.
All right, folks, so this is us into the work plans. It's just to say there's a couple of forms there as well that I, again, recommend that you download. So it's just basically about the core funding themes and the core funding outcomes, okay? We're asking in this for one year of activity, basically from next April until the end of March 2027, with specific and time-bound activity outlined. Again, we're talking about, kind of almost a quarterly update. We understand as well that things can change over the year. So we always say that to everybody, if you do receive CRC core funding, it's always just for us to have a conversation with everybody to say, look, you plan to do this, have your plans changed? We also understand that, a lot of these things are dependent on you getting other sources of funding, other project funds, whoever else that might be from, okay? So that can all change. So just first of all, we're just looking for a work area project title. I'm not going to fill all these in, but anyway, that's just really a very short, you've only got 20 words there, but again, that's helpful, again, for Karina, who's doing the assessment, just to get into your head, okay, this is what they're trying to do, all right. We're just saying here, also asking about any other funders who may or may not be supporting this work. So you might have funding already in place, but it just helps us to build up a picture of the overall, the kind of who else is supporting the work. Okay, so next is just asking you about generally where the district councils are, where the work will be taking place. Just tick that all that are necessary there. Okay, but these are the basically 4 areas that the Together Building United Community Strategy has been using since 2013 when it came out. Okay, so once you choose your whatever on T-Book, it gives you a wee bit more about the theme. Okay, so seeing your background documents that you have the T-Book outcomes and then CRC's themed as well. So if you just look at those themes and a wee bit of a description around it, basically depending on what you've chosen up in that T-Book heading, it'll then select what might be the most appropriate kind of sub-theme to use. And basically this is us really trying to say to the Executive Office, look, you're talking about our safe community, but here's a wee bit more detail about what people are talking about. Okay, so look, this is just really what you're planning to do, this box here. And again, for purposes of Karina doing the assessment, that's where the information becomes really crucial. And it's just basically like, what are you wanting to do? It's asking, what are you planning to do? And then really you've got that box below it as well saying, why does this work need to take place? Okay, so it's almost like your kind of needs analysis. So in there you can give that wee bit of detail that Karina's talking about there, generally around what you're wanting to do and your general time frame for it. I think you have the option of uploading up to 2 documents. Mm-hmm. That could be, for example, a piece of research you maybe commissioned in the past, or an evaluation report, or whatever else it might be. You know, maybe a bit of consultation work you've done as an organisation. Again, if you help it kind of support your case and saying this is why this needs to take place. This part is asking how your work area aligns with public policy and community relations. So you have the where we've kind of referred back to the T-Box strategy and the outcomes delivery plan there. You can talk about that in that section. This part we're just asking, do you foresee any issues that may impede progress and how do you plan to respond to these?
So it could even be, you know, that you are going to do something and lack of beneficiaries, or that something that you're going to do isn't received well in your community. Yes, that's also another risk, you know. So, and then just tell us how you would mitigate against that risk if that was to happen.
So at this stage we're asking about, who do you plan to work with? Okay, so it's basically putting in details here of, for example, where we start off left to right here. So it's the who and where, like, you know, so I've got in a women's group in Lisburn. So it's generally what we just tend to get is a name of the community organisation, or it could be a school, or it could be a particular subset of a community. Just giving as much detail as you can in there, okay? So you basically just fill in as many as you need there about the beneficiary groups that you're hoping to work with. Okay, so it says work area 2. Folks, so anybody, you know, most people would have, say we're averaging 2 to 3 work areas, so you're going to go in and do the same basically down here again. Again, just keep it in your mind. You're thinking strategic pieces of work. So if it makes sense to have it in one, happy days. If you need 2 or 3 or more, that's fine, but just make sure it's strategic. So what it's asking here is, do you need a second work area template? So if I hit yes, it gives you the whole stuff to go down again, those boxes. And if you hit no, it says okay. So we're going to go into organisation management and development, okay? You're all going to be different organisations applying for different amounts of money for supporting different sort of posts. So some of you might be more kind of project delivery, some of you might be, you know, chief executives, more others could be kind of managers. So you're maybe not involved in so much of the actual formal delivery, but oversight of things, okay? Or for support for admin posts or finance posts. So again, this all links into the value for money assessment end of things. So we're only asking for this across the whole bid. We're not asking for specific work areas. But if there's something you want to say here about in terms of what you've asked for and the rules that it's going to support, if you want to say a wee bit about what that's going to support and enable within your organisation. So whether it's finance management, staff management, oversight of governance arrangements, strategic planning. So we've got a list there, okay. You can put in other, but we've tried to cover whatever we could just based on previous applications. Again, this helps us, you know, whenever we're feeding back to the executive office and others about what the core funding programme is, this sort of information helps us to say, look, we're supporting basically the infrastructure of organisations. And
let me see, and this again is just a wee summary of how it will be managed by organisation, you know, so obviously, you know, what managers will be doing, what CEOs will be doing, how will the board be involved in the management of this grant as well, and just sort of giving us a summary of everything of how that's all working. So the first thing it's going to ask you on the budget page is about the salaries. So there's this first table that you need to complete. So you can put in up to 6 posts in this table. You then need to transfer the information from here, and you need to retype the job title again in this box, and then the amount, and then we put in a running cost, if any. You don't have to apply for running costs, but you can obviously. And again, be realistic. So then the next section will ask you about the posts and whether they are new positions or if they currently exist. And then the next one will be 1 or 2 years. 2 is the maximum at the minute. In this box, we need to provide the match funding that I talked about. So that's your match funding of how the remaining salary will be funded, but also match funding will include of your organisation. So if your organisation is also being funded by various other funders for other things, it's good to just get a good picture of what money's coming into the organisation and what all you do as a totality as well. And these are just a couple of tick boxes to confirm that you're up to date with your HMRC payments and that you're up to date with all the pension payments in your organisation. So this is where you're just doing a bit of declaration that you've understood our values as an organisation. So you just tick some boxes that you understand vision and values of CRC. And then down here is all the documents that you need to provide us with. So the first one will be your governing document. So that's your constitution or your memorandum and articles of association. And don't just submit the first page of it. Please submit the document in its entirety. Some people think if they just submit the front cover, that's enough, but it's not. So we'll send that. The organisational strategic plan. So that's very important because we need to see that, see our work is actually fitting into the organisation and is it part of your overall strategy, and that you haven't just dreamt this up for the sake of this organisation, Your most recent audited accounts we ask for, so that's the ones that go to your accountant and get signed off and checked and everything else. So that's done by the professionals. And then you've got your management accounts, and these are your accounts that you would submit, on a monthly or bi-monthly or whatever basis to your board of directors or trustees. Organisational chart, like I said, of your entire organisation and where the new posts will fit in, and then a list of your committee or board members, just their names. I don't need to know their phone numbers or addresses or anything like that there, just their names, and if they hold an office bearer position, just put that beside it as well. And then one of the following policies: community relations policy, good relations or equality policy or equal opportunities policy. And also if you work with young people or vulnerable adults or children, you need to submit your child protection policy or child safeguarding policy and vulnerable adults policies. So yes, these were some common mistakes that I came across last year. So I think it's helpful to share that with you. So obviously, like I said, the eligibility failures, not submitting the correct documentation, that is so important that you get that part right. Not reading the FAQs together with the core funding guidelines. There is important information in that maybe isn't obvious in the guidelines, so please do read the two together. Duplication of answers across several questions, and that might sound daft, but the amount of people that actually give me the same answer in 2 boxes is unreal when they're 2 totally different questions. So again, or even across the work plans, they're giving me the same answer to box A in work plan 1, and then work plan 2, they're giving me the same answer again. And, so just don't duplicate your answers. Or not actually answering the questions. So read the question and make sure you understand what is being asked, and give us the answer to what we're asking. Don't just fill the box for the sake of it, with something totally irrelevant. So not providing supporting evidence for the demonstration of need. It's not compulsory, but I can tell you it really helps your case if you can tell me or show me as well, where you're coming from, so people would write, there's an evidence or there's a need because I know, because I, work in this community, blah, blah, blah. But give me a wee bit more than that, you know what I mean? Like, I can't just take your word for it. Did you know? So, show me something, a consultation, a newspaper article, whatever it might be, statistics, policing statistics, anything. Show me where you're coming from with your information. Not providing a detailed timeline for year one, and preferably the quarterly breakdown so that we have a better way of tracking things. But the amount of people that just didn't submit a timeline at all was, again, unreal. So please do so. Not being clear in the application how the post applied for is fitting into the proposed work plan. So they've applied for this post and they've all these lovely work plans, and I've come to the end of the application and I went, what's this person actually going to be doing? You know, so please just be clear what their role is and what they're going to be doing, and what element of the work plan are they delivering on, you know. So yes, please do that. Not clearly detailing where the match funding's coming from. Again, I can't decipher where you're getting this money from, you know. So I know you want 75% of a salary, but I'm no clear as to where the 25% is coming from. I maybe guess it could be your reserves, but you haven't told me. You know, again, it might sound really silly, but the difference in one mark is the difference of getting funding and not getting funding. And there are people in this audience today that know this. So, you know, if you get 69, you're not getting funding. If you get 70, you're in the funded list. So and by just not doing one simple thing, we'll lose you a mark or two here and there, and every little mark will, you know, tally up. Not providing details of other funding secured or applied for the overall organisation. Not detailing delivery partners and their roles in the work plan. So if there are other partners helping to deliver this, let us know so that I can, you know, get an overall picture of what's going on. And not detailing how proposed outcomes will be measured. So people have provided us all these really good outcomes and they're brilliant, and you're like, yeah, that would be really good if they, you know, met that outcome. But then you're like, I wonder how they're going to measure it. And you can't find it anywhere in the application. And again, you'll lose a mark or two just by not telling us that. When considering the CR value of your proposal, use the key principles, and they're inside the guidance notes. So go to that page and read through those. Do not assume prior knowledge of your work. We can only score on the information provided in the application. Make sure that you've uploaded all your documentation before submitting your bid. The system won't recognise if it's the correct documentation, like I said, so just double check everything. Using plain English is fine. You know, we're not looking for any fancy buzzwords, or, you know, don't use abbreviations that you use in your field, because I might not understand what you're talking about. So, you know, be clear English, and even if you want to bullet point stuff, it's much easier to read. You know, when you're reading a lot of applications, the clearer it is for me to read, the easier, you know, the better I can get through it as well, and you know, I can understand better what you're doing. And just note that difference between management accounts and annual accounts, and we do need both. Okay. So the submission date is Wednesday, the 12th of November at 4 p.m. and we can't accept any documents that come in after this date. So once the applications come in, the assessment process will start, and that will be between November and February. That we will go through the whole assessment process, and then we will take that to a decision panel of our board the week commencing the 23rd of February.